So if you don't know acronyms, you're screwed.
High density something.
That always three letters.
High definition.
It's a
Okay.
three-letter acronym.
I'm about to get the new Apple phone.
HDMI is high
Know that either.
No.
I didn't know that.
Did you Google it?
I knew it was high definition.
If I hear one, I gotta go look it up and see what the hell those letters stand for.
You know Jerry at the end?
I'm a new Jerry.
He's the old Jerry.
Here's a
That's
spot
the new
for you
Jerry.
over here, sir.
No, he's
I'm
he's
37.
always on a different one.
37.
Because he's in a different one today.
Real fast.
Next
Hey,
day, Jerry.
right in the middle of Las Vegas too.
Now hold on a second.
You know what?
We have three Jerrys
Is
now.
Spill
Are we only gonna have Jerry's on this side? Do I have to move to the
and
other side?
Ireland Avenue close to where we are?
You're fine.
Am I fine?
I wish they put Kiwis on my map.
So Jerry,
That's where Wayne is.
Somebody lost?
Well, I
he doesn't have
drive
his
Wayne.
ears on?
I'm Wayne's
You left your
driver.
ears at home?
That's how I got to find this place.
He can
But
read lips now.
I called him this morning. Our systems were go at 9
Believe that,
o'clock.
I got a bridge.
I called him at about 11:15.
Unless you want
Hey,
something,
listen, I wanna
then
walk.
again,
So just meet
you
me.
can't hear
He
you.
wants to walk from, he lives at Villa Hills.
So now that I explained what
And he
HDMI
is a
is,
good little walker.
Thank you
He
very
likes
much.
to walk.
now,
His election's over and done with. Who won?
Elon Musk.
Did you see where
You're a
that
lovely
lady,
young woman.
the Iowa pollster who said that,
Oh, Rick's with his group, isn't he?
He's with his friends, yes.
What are you gonna have?
I'm going to splurge my groceries. I'm serious. I just
Got my army hat on today after singing for the veterans out at Independence Senior Center. Great day, great day. Celebrate our veterans and all who served and gave their life for this country. God bless you. God bless the Optimist Club. Filming today, John Middleton talking about the election.
Here's John. She said you just can't.
we will open our November the 13th meeting with a prayer from John and the reciting of our Optimist Creed and the Pledge of Allegiance.
If you stand and join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And Lord, we thank you dearly for all of our veterans who have watched over us and cared for us and saved our lives for us in many ways. Be there and watch over them, and let us always love each other. In Jesus' name we ask it. Amen.
Good job, John. Be so strong. To talk health, happiness, and prosperity to every person you meet. To make all your friends feel there's something in them. To look at the side of everything and make your optimism come true. To think only the best, to work only for the best, and to expect only the best. To be just enthusiastic about the success of others as you are about your own. To forget the mistakes of the past and press on to greater achievements of the future. To wear a cheerful countenance at all times and give everything which reaches a smile. Give us much time to live in yourself. You have no time to criticize others. To be too large for worry, too noble for anger, too strong for fear, and too happy in the presence of trouble.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Salute.
Salute.
We have a returning visitor joining us today, Mr. John Huffman. Would you stand up and be recognized briefly? Oh, Lord. Yes.
Y'all recognize me?
This is your second visit, right?
Yeah, sure. Second or third?
Third visit.
Yeah, but I'm gonna join.
And you're turned out very well today. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, more young blood.
You
Young.
you have to put down the person who signed the petition. If they get 2 members, they win a set of dishes.
Oh, nice.
Okay, welcome my Optimist friends. My name is Denny Shelton of the Optimist Club of Covington, Kentucky. We meet every Wednesday at 12 noon at Pee Wee's, 2325 Anderson Road, Crescent Springs. For our TBNK viewers, today is November the 13th, 2024. Today's presentation is videotaped and rebroadcast on Spectrum Channel 203, Ultra Fiber Channel 815 on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Rebroadcast on TBNK Telecommunications Broadcast in Northern Kentucky. Stay connected with TBNK on to go, on demand, TBNK Facebook, and Optimist Facebook. James Morlock is our program director, editor, and camera operator. But today, our camera operator is calling in for Mr. Morlock, and his name is Brian Costello.
Thank you, Brian.
So, with that, we have a very dignified and distinguished. Is that redundant? Scratch one of them. A dignified and distinguished speaker today, and Mr. John Middleton. And here to introduce Mr. Middleton is J.B. Smith.
You just did.
Yeah.
This is a short, we know this guy. Thank you. I'm Jenny Bell Smith. I'm past president of the Optimists Club for 2 times. Also the secretary program director, and I love every minute of bringing civic engagement, bringing people through the process. And today I have the honor and pleasure of introducing one of our dear members, John C. Middleton. He is the Kenton County Clerk, and John will give us an update on the election of 2024. Thank you very much. Give John a big hand. Thank you, John.
All right, thank you, Optimist members, and thank you for those watching on TBNK. I've done this a number of years, and every year I say I just love this. Just because I'm a political beast, and I'm kind of a geek when it comes to that stuff. And presidential election years are always, they always say it's the most important election of our lifetime, and everybody cares about the president. There's a higher voter turnout and all that. So election years are always fun. And so the weeks leading up to the election, I was watching the polls every day. We're going to talk a little bit about that and how that all came out. But of course, nationally, there was about almost 148 million voters that voted. My guess is that's about 50% of the entire electorate, or the entire population of the U.S. Probably not the total of those registered, but probably a little over 50%. Of course, Donald Trump won in what many are considering a landslide, and won 312 electoral votes to 226 electoral votes. And one, interestingly, and probably for the first time in a long time, a Republican won the popular vote, the total votes that were out there, by over 3 million, as of this morning, over 3,144,699. And I think they're still counting some votes, maybe in Arizona or somewhere crazy like that, but it came out to about 51.06% to 48.94%. And so that was a difference of about 2.2%. So let's talk about the national. Let's talk about the election and how that came about. Of course, you had these swing states. You had 7 or 8 swing states that were there, and the polling all showed that they were very close. But once again, the polling was wrong. The polling was wrong because some of those swing states were supposedly for Harris, Vice President Harris, and he ended up being for President Trump. Some of them were for President Trump, but very, very close, and ended up being much more different. So The national polls, and of course, we have this. We had a presentation a few weeks ago about the Constitution and how we operate. We don't operate on a popular vote. We don't take a vote across the country. The founding fathers found that was the best thing because it allowed smaller states to have some say in what occurred on a national level. If you had a national vote, and if you really look at that, you look at the maps. Those maps are always very interesting. You look at those colored maps. They came up. I don't know how long ago it's been, but it's been. I don't remember as a kid having all those colors, but they have red for Republican and blue for Democrat. And if you look at the national map, the map looks like a big red spot, because there's so much of America that is not heavily populated. But the Democrats control and the vote is very heavy in the big cities. So you'll see these blue dots on the map. And there'll be hundreds of thousands of votes that are coming out of these big cities, but the rest of America is all red. Some of these more sparsely populated. So the popular vote can be close, in the electoral college can be a landslide. In this case, I'm not even sure the popular vote was close. There's over 3 million difference in that. In Arizona, the polls, I followed what was called Real Clear Politics. They had a polling average. They took the average of the polls that were out there. Real Clear Politics had a 0.4% advantage for Trump, and ended up being 5.7. So there was a difference of 2.9% in that poll. That was a pro-Trump. I'm sorry, it was 2.8% in Arizona. Trump was supposed to win by 2.8% and ended up winning by 5.7%. Pennsylvania, one of those probably the swingiest of the swing states. I figured it was going to come down to Pennsylvania. My pre-election prediction is that it was going to be an extremely close race, that Pennsylvania was going to decide the thing, but it ended up not even being, relevant because there were so many other states that went for Trump. But in Pennsylvania, the final polling showed Trump ahead by 0.4%. How close can you be on that? Ended up winning it by about 2%. There were a couple polls, the Mayor's poll and the Washington Post poll in those areas had Harris winning. Within a week of that, had Harris winning Pennsylvania. Ohio, which was probably not so much a swing state anymore, showed Trump up 9.3%. The latest tally on that is 11.3% for Trump. So it's a two percentage point difference. Michigan was supposed to be a Harris territory, right? 0.5%. That's what the final poll showed, that she was going to win by half a percentage point. Trump won by 1.4%, which is 1.9%. Once again, the Emerson poll and the Mayor's poll showed Harris winning the state of Michigan, and these were within a week. Wisconsin, another one of the extremely close states. The pre-polling showed Harris at 0.4%, and Trump ended up winning by 0.8%, so that was a 1.2% swing. The New York Times, the Trafalgar poll both showed Harris. This is within a week of the election, winning that state. North Carolina, Trump was supposed to win that state by 1.2%, ended up winning by almost double that, 3.3%, a 2.1% difference. New York Times and the CNN polls both showed Harris within a week of that, of winning that state, which, North Carolina, if they had done that, would have been different. Georgia, the one that kind of came down the last time, was kind of a surprise. It had been a red state for a number of years. Went for President Biden the last time. The last polling, the conglomeration of those last polls showed Trump up 1.3%, ended up winning by 2.2% or 0.9%. So what's my point here? The point is the polls were wrong again, but they were better. They were actually much better in some of those states. In some of the prior elections, they had a 5 or 6% difference in Trump. When you look at these polls, they say, oh, well, there's a margin of error of 2 or 3 percentage points. And most of these were within 2 or 3 percentage points. But You know, there was a saying that there's lies, and statistics. And I'm going to say that there's lies, and polls. And the reason for that is that you can kind of fudge some of those numbers a little bit to give whatever you want to give as the result. And so there's a question as to the New York Times and CNN, not exactly conservative bastions, were they fudging their poll numbers to do that? Because those polls could have a difference in an election, especially in an extremely close election. Do you want to vote for somebody that's going to lose? Do you want to vote for a loser? No, you don't want to vote for a loser. You want to vote for a winner. And so you can, if you try to fudge the polls a little bit to see where they're at. I'm not saying that that's what happened, but because it was within margin of error. And once again, they have gotten much better. They have gotten much better with that. But you know, the polls. Other big thing is, in order to pass legislation, you have to have a legislative body that's going to do that. In the United States, we call that the Congress. We've got two houses of the Congress, the Senate and the House. The Senate was controlled by the Democrats prior to this time. And now we're pretty definitive, although there's some senator in Pennsylvania that refuses to acknowledge that he lost. But we're pretty definitive that the Republicans are going to pick up 4 seats in the Senate, take over the United States Senate, and so, you know, Ohio, our neighbor to the north, Bernie Moreno. If you watched any TV and locally here, you saw enough commercials for Sherrod Brown and Bernie Moreno over the last probably month to make you sick, and you were unsure of who was the devil in that race, but I think that the Trump victory there probably helped, you know, an 11-point victory probably helped Moreno win that race. Montana, which is a very conservative state, and John Tester, who was somebody that presumed to be more conservative as a Democrat, but still voted a lot of times with the Democrats on policies that maybe he didn't necessarily agree with, but wanted to get along and go along. He ended up losing in Montana to Sheehy. And then, of course, the Pennsylvania race, which was close, and once again, that Trump vote there probably pushed across the finish line for McCormick to win that race. So the Republicans are definitely going to be controlling the United States Senate. And even if it was a 50-50 tie, who cast the tie vote in that? It's the Vice President of the United States. And actually, our Vice President got to cast a few deciding votes this last time, and of course sided with the Democrats when the Democrats were in control. So you've got you know, you certainly don't have a huge majority there, but it's going to be close. The House, the United States House of Representatives, the Congress, is still up in the air. It is still up in the air. There were 5 races that were called yesterday. 3 for Republicans and 2 for Democrats. The total, according to the Fox News website, 216 Republicans, 207 Democrats. If you remember from our presentation on the Constitution, there's 435 members of Congress. And so that leaves us with 12 more races to be decided. So the Republicans have to pick up 2 more seats in order to get that majority. And as of this morning, the Republicans have flipped 7 seats that were the previous Democrat seats. The Democrats have flipped 6 Republican seats. So there was a one person difference. And interestingly enough, President Trump has announced his appointment of 2 Republican members of Congress. Those 2 races are going to be up if those people get selected and approved by the Senate. Those races will be up. They are, from what I understand, Republican districts, but you know, anything can happen, especially when you have all that kind of money. You remember 4 years ago we had 2 Georgia seats that were post seats, and the Democrats picked up both of those. Lots of money went in on both sides on that. Interesting too, and I didn't get the stats on this, I probably should have, that's another thing that we could talk about, is the money that went into this. Kamala Harris raised $1 billion and spent $1 billion, and now it's coming out after the election that a lot of the celebrity endorsements that she had were actually paid endorsements. So kind of crazy that you would have to pay for an endorsement, and apparently it didn't work very well. So not a very good use of money there. So that's the national level. Let's talk about what happened in Kenton County. So in Kenton County, we had 55.11% turnout, about 80,693 votes. People voted in Kenton County. And when I say the 55.11%, that is a kind of a misnomer too, because according to the state law, the local Board of Elections cannot remove somebody from the voter rolls unless they self-remove themselves. And so they can't remove.
dead?
They can't remove. Now those dead folks, I think that'll come through, and those folks. But if you've moved out of the area, so there's according to the voter rolls, there's 146,000 registered voters in Kenton County, and a population of about 150,000 people. If you do the math on that, you've got to think that there's more than 4,000 people that are under 18 years of age or not eligible to vote for whatever reason. So we have more people registered to vote than are actually eligible to vote per se in the state. And there's a way, to be able to we have voter ID in Kentucky, and so I think our elections are pretty safe, but we do need to get some cleanup of our voter rolls. Kenton County is still a Republican county. It started in the 1990s. A guy named Clyde Middleton, I remember his name. I remember him very well. He was married to my mother, and was also my father. He won an election for judge executive in 1989, and that kind of started the progression of the county becoming a Republican county. It really wasn't that long ago that registration has shifted, and I think if you look at the numbers on registration, you're still going to find that it's not as red as you might think it is. There's still a lot of people that are registered Democrat that will vote Republican. And we'll vote straight Republican. So now that's one of the things that's interesting. In Kentucky, we have this straight ticket voting. When the Democrats were in charge, they did not want to get rid of that because the Republicans were starting to come on, and they wanted to make sure that they kept that advantage. And now the Republicans don't want to get rid of it because it's a huge advantage in Kenton County. So of the 80,243 people, now this is another interesting thing. If you remember just a second ago, I said there were 80,693 people that voted, that there was 80,243 people that voted in the presidential election. What 450 people didn't vote for president? That's what I'd like to know. Why would you not vote for president? You're going to vote. I don't know, maybe they're just so upset with the whole process. But in any case, of that, those are obviously the most votes of any race in Kenton County as a presidential election. 42,608 voted straight ticket, either Republican or Democrat. So of that, over half of your people voted straight ticket. They voted straight Republican or straight Democrat. And when I say that, 63% voted straight Republican. 34% voted straight Democrat. So the Republicans, right off the bat, if you're running for president, if you're running for dog catcher, you have a 29% lead with half of the electorate. So you really got to work hard as a Democrat in order to win a race, and it happens. But you really have to have a lot of split ticket voting in order for that to happen. And that shows the strength of the Republican Party in Kenton County. Trump won big. He won 60% to 38%. That was a 22 percentage point difference. That's a blowout. That's a huge win in Kenton County. And this was a county that voted for Andy Beshear. 2 years ago. So, you still, you got that whole thing, and we can talk a little bit about Andy Bashir and how all that went down. One of the other interesting things, I still need to look up because I have no idea. I had no idea that this party existed, but apparently there is a Kentucky party. Anybody know about a Kentucky party? There's a straight ticket Kentucky party, and they outpolled the Libertarian, which was the other. So there's four parties that were there. And I don't know whether people were just misguided, like, oh, I'm in Kentucky, I'm going to vote Kentucky party. I don't know what that was, but that's what the difference in polling numbers were. So that's you had 3% that voted either Kentucky party or Libertarian, straight Libertarian party. So that's interesting. And in a very close race, those numbers can make a difference, but they didn't. The two biggest races that I was following, and probably the two biggest races in Kenton County, were state legislative races that were going on. That was Senator Chris McDaniel, who was chair of the Budget Committee, very powerful position in Frankfort, brought back over $1 billion to Northern Kentucky, $1 billion with a B. A lot of that is the bridge money. There was a lot of other money that came back in terms of roads, in terms of allocations to different charitable organizations that help our community. He was a very powerful person, and he easily kept his seat. The other one was Stephanie Dietz. Stephanie, they had, when they had redistricted the last time, they had made a district that was solidly blue into more of a purple district. A little bit of Republican, a little bit of Democrat. Very close race. She ran against an incumbent named Buddy Wheatley, who had been a fire chief in Covington for a number of years and won by like 2 percentage points. It was a couple hundred votes, I think, 2 years ago. So she was running for re-election for the first time. So she's running in a district that includes the heavily Republican areas of Edgewood and somewhat in Fort Wright, and then maybe a purple area in Park Hills, and then the inner city, very Democrat area in Covington. So that was her district. So you had, Republicans, Democrats in that, and they were kind of targeting her. In fact, Governor Andy Bashir had, I think, 6 races across the state, and the 2 of them were Chris McDaniel and Stephanie Dietz that he was targeting and trying to win. Of course, he didn't win those. He started off, like I said, with a big advantage for a Republican candidate, 29-point advantage going in, but Chris McDaniel ended up winning. Now, Chris's district included a lot more other Republican areas. He ended up winning 60 to 40%, a 20% victory, which was a blowout. And then Stephanie Dietz also won by 12 percentage points, 56 to 44. So it was a Republican blowout, even in Kenton County. And so that came across the whole. So what were some of the issues there? Why did we think those races were going to be close? Chris McDaniel had done some polling on that race. And the polling had showed that there was a 17% difference on the abortion issue between pro-abortion and pro-life issue. 17% were more pro-abortion. And that number kind of has shocked a lot of folks, but that became one of the mantras of both the national campaign for Harris and local campaigns. And that was an issue, it kind of resonated, I think, maybe in the Andy Bashir race 2 years ago. You have a lot of the suburban females that were very pro-abortion, and that played into it. So I think McDaniel was a little concerned when he saw those numbers in the poll, but they weren't able to capitalize on that. And I don't think they capitalized on it on a national level. Vice President Harris really ran on this pro-woman platform that included a very strong pro-abortion message, and a lot of women's issues and protecting women and all that. And I don't think that was very successful. Was as successful on a number of levels. I think ultimately a lot of the women that were, even though they were pro-abortion, when they came down to it, they looked at it and said, am I able to afford groceries for my family? My cost has gone up substantially, and my pay has not increased commensurate with that cost that it's costing me. They also looked at it and said, on the immigration issue, am I concerned about folks that are coming in that may be not the best people, that may be making my community unsafe? Am I less safe in the community? So that could be another issue. And then the backlash, when you talk about a gender gap, yes, there's a gender gap. Maybe the females were voting more Democrat, but Trump actually played, and I was, as a Trump supporter, I was a little concerned, like, hey, you're playing this bro card too much, you're trying to get these young men, and but that ended up being an advantage. He ended up picking up double-digit increases from his last campaign among black and Hispanic men and young white males. The young voters, the young males, saw a backlash against this thing because they felt like they were being left out of this because it was an all-female thing, like it's only female, whatever, and that was a backlash, I think, and I think that played really into Trump's hands. He ended up winning these percentage of male young voters, and when you talk about that, the older people tend to vote more and the younger people tend to vote less. But when you talk about percentages of votes, you talk about 10% of, 10% increase of maybe 3 million votes. That's 300,000 votes, right? If you spread that over America, it may be 30 or 40,000 votes in a state, and that's what the difference is. So. Same thing happened here in Kenton County. If you look at the numbers of those things and how those races played out, I think there was still a very strong Republican Trump vote. Although you'll see that Trump ran behind McDaniel and Stephanie Dietz and that, and so there's still some Republican angst, if you will, with the president, but. He still was able to pull it out. There are a couple of the other races that had occurred in Kenton County. There was a Senate race that was in the southern part of Kenton County, included Kenton County, Grant County, and Scott County. Damon Fair had previously represented that district. Damon had lived in northern Kentucky for a number of years. He kind of handpicked and endorsed his successor, which was Matt Nunn, a small businessman from Georgetown. Ran up, he worked for Toyota and did a bunch of stuff there, but also he and his wife owned a bar in Georgetown that got shut down during the pandemic. And so he was kind of running that race. The district, that part of the district in Kenton County is an extremely conservative, very Republican area. And he ran up some huge totals in Kenton County, and I don't know what the final total number was for the district, but he won 73% of the vote in Kenton County. And so, you look at those numbers, those are huge. Another race that was pretty safe was Kim Mosier. She was running against a pretty potentially formidable on paper candidate. A lady, Heather Krabby, that had worked at the Chase College of Law, was a lawyer. But Mosier continued to work and had lots of money, which is always helpful. She won 66% of the vote to 34%. Another state rep race that was in part of Kenton County and part of Boone County. Young state rep Steve Doan had beat Adam Koenig in the Republican primary 2 years ago and won the general election. He was up again this time and won Kenton County 61% to 39%. So it's still 22% difference, and that's a pretty big difference. Another guy, probably most of you guys don't know, is named Mark Hart. He's from the south and east of here, but he had a few precincts in Kenton County. You show the power of straight ticket voting. He was running against an independent, okay? So that independent did not have the benefit of getting any of the straight Democrat votes. Mark Hart got all the straight Republican votes. Mark Hart won 80% of the vote in Kenton County, 80-20. So a big difference. So, you know, how does the vote happen in Kenton County? And Dan Humphrey here could tell you the same thing applies that applied 30 years ago when Dan was running, and that is the Democrats try to run up the numbers in their inner city, in Covington, in Erlanger, in some of those areas. Republicans try to run it up in the suburbs, and now the rural areas. Those rural areas used to be a kind of a Democratic area, and now it's completely flipped, and they're like much stronger Republican area. Democrats did not turn out their vote. The Democrats did not get their vote out in Covington. So you look at the precinct in Covington 2, probably the most Democratic precinct. That's downtown Covington. I think maybe they vote at the library or somewhere around there. Downtown inner city Covington, 40% of the people voted, so less than 15% less than the countywide average. Their straight Democratic vote is 72 to 25% Democrat. So they had over a 50% or almost 50% advantage. Vice President Harris got 72% of the vote to 25% for Donald Trump. Both Sierra and Curran, Jennifer Sierra and Aaron Curran, who were running against McDaniel and Dietz, got 72% of the vote. So very Democrat area, 40% of the vote. Go to Edgewood 2, okay? Still Stephanie Dietz area, still Chris McDaniel area, very different. 71% of the people turned out to vote. 71%, so it was like a 30% difference in that. 70% of the people voted straight Republican, 29% voted straight Democrat. You had over a 50% difference there. Trump got 63% of the vote. McDaniel and Dietz both got 70% of the vote in Edgewood 2. So much different scenarios. Same thing carries over. Villa Hills, Crestview Hills, Independence, Morningview, Nicholson. Those are all areas that had high turnout, much higher than the percentage of the countywide turnout, and very Republican turnout. So those were areas that were very interesting. Even some of the areas that Democrats in the past had relied on, but that were probably different. I would call it the middle class. I mean, is there still a middle class in America? If there is, they live in Ludlow and they live in Ellesmere. And Donald Trump won both of those. In fact, the Republican Party got 56% of the straight ticket voting in Ludlow, which is unbelievable. Back in the 90s, you wouldn't have heard that. It would have been probably 60-40 Democrat, and the Republicans could still, because of split ticket, you could still win. But President Trump won 54% of the vote in Ludlow. So, you know, that's huge. What about some of the other issues and races that are on there? Of course, you had all those state legislative races, all the city council races. Interestingly, there were two state offices that were unopposed on that. That was the office of Commonwealth Attorney Rob Sanders and the office of John C. Middleton. You know that name. Is Circuit Clerk running unopposed. I highly recommend running unopposed. And my wife thanks you. So we both ran unopposed, and I soundly beat Mr. Unopposed. So there's a soil and water conservation district. You can look it up and look up to see what exactly happened there. The chairman of that was an attorney named Galen Bridges. He lost. Interestingly, I don't know what happened. I don't know when there was a backlash there, but he came in fifth out of the 4 places. City of Broadway, the winners were Tim Wortman, and I don't know, it's Tim and Diane Wortman, I guess they're husband and wife. They both won. Michael Kendall, Andrew Clift, David Bradford, and Kelly Dudley. And Covington, you know, our largest city, there were some folks that were running there, some turnover there. Shannon Smith, who's currently on the commission, won. Tim Dowling won. I believe he's on commission. And then James Toby and Tim Ackery were the other two that got on. City of Crescent Springs, you might know that. A guy named Bob Mueller is the #1 vote getter, but our very own J.B. Smith was the #2 vote getter in the city of Jean Bell Smith. And she is joined by Carol McGowan, Donna Keeley, Jeff Smith, and Mark Wartenberg. There were unopposed races in the city of Crestview Hills. City of Edgewood, there were 8 running for 7 spots. And Ben Marledge, Rob Phelan, Jeff Shriver, Joe Mesmer, Jamie Rule, Scott Spilly, and Bridget Grady Spears were the 7. The 8th was a young person, Matt Parka, who was the one that was left out. The city of Ellesmere, there were 7 running for 6 spots. Gloria Grubbs, Serena Owen, Maria Vogt, Joanne Barnett Smith, I don't know if she's related to Jean, Justin Clifford Wade, and Missy Enxel Tester. He's running with middle names in Ellesmere. City of Erlanger, our 2nd largest city in the state, or in our county, I'm sorry. Diana Nicely, who runs a small business in Erlanger. Jennifer Jasper Lucas, Tom Cahill, Renee Wilson, Tyson Hermes, Michelle Fields, Renee Skidmore, and Rebecca Reckers, and Christopher Farmer. Those were the 9 that are elected there. The city of Fairview were unopposed, and the city of Fort Mitchell were running unopposed. The city of Fort Wright, the mayor got out and said, vote in all these people and we're going to run as a ticket. And so they had one person that was not currently on the council, and they did not win. So all the current council won. Margie Witt, Scott Wall, Jason Collins, David Ablin, Bernie Wessels, Justin J. Weber, and Jason Worm, and those were the 6. Jason Worms was the one that was out. City of Independence, and I may be corrected now, Independence may be our 2nd largest city. And actually, from a geographic standpoint, for your historical bias, Independence is one of the largest geographic cities in the state. Really? So you talk about all the growth that's happening out there, and with 536, it's going to be something else out there. But Chris Vogelpool, Carol Franzen, Tom Brinker, Greg Waite, Greg Steffen, Matthew Feeler, and were the 6 that got elected. City of Kenton Vale was running unopposed. Those council candidates got 35 votes and all got elected. So very small city. Lakeside Park, Cassie Schrabel, Marianne Feynman, Brian Waite, Tom Bernheimer, David Wolfer, and Dennis Landwehr were the ones elected. City of Ludlow had 8 people running for 6 spots. David Ziegler, Sarah Thompson, Stephen Chapman, Julie Navarre, Paula Rezus, and Abigail Miller. And then the city of Park Hills had 11 people running for 6 spots, so they had a big race. Sarah Frolicker, Emily Salyers, Laura Cardosi, Pam Spoor was the #1 vote getter, I'm sorry, and then Steve Elkins was #6. Ryland Heights was running unopposed, and then Taylor Mill, there was 6 running for 4 spots, Mark Kreinberg, Rose Merritt, Dan Murray, and Carolyn Braden. And then in Villa Hills, there was